So in this session, we already have HCX deployed between the two regions as we saw earlier. We have extended 10.193 subnet from on-prem to AVS. And in this session, we're going to pick one of the virtual machines, VM4 10.204, and migrate that over to AVS. We're going to keep the same IP address because it will be attached on the same layer 2 segment. I'm going to use bulk migration method, so where we'll be able to continue to use the VM while the bits are getting copied over. And once the last sync is done, then the on-prem will be shut down. And on the AVS side, we're going to boot it up. Okay, so switching to my lab. So I'm back to on-prem HCX environment. I'm in the migration tab. I'm going to select migrate. And like we mentioned earlier, we have multiple site pairs, so I have to pick a specific site pair. The pair was set up from on-prem to AVS, and that's the direction where we are moving the VM. So we will not check this reverse migration box here. But in general, let's take a scenario where site pair is set up from on-prem to AVS, and you have a VM sitting in AVS, which you want to bring back to on-prem. In that case, you would check this off and go look for the VM on the AVS side. So I'm going to pick my session. If you remember earlier, it's TNT48. Right now, it's talking to my on-prem location. I'm going to go into my folder and pick this VM and add it to my, sorry, 1 second. I'm going to give it some name here. Move VM4 to West US AVS. And this green space is for doing settings which apply to all the VMs in your mobility group. In this example, there's just one VM, so I can just come down here and do the setup. We do need to configure all the parameters which the VM is going to use when it reaches AVS vCenter. So I have a specific container where I want to put. There's a destination folder, which I typically use so I can find my VMs easily. So continuing with my settings here, I need to pick the storage. I can set the encoding, and then I'm going to pick bulk migration. I'm going to set the force power off on the on-prem side after the migration has been done. I know this VM has some attributes I want to take over, so I'm going to select all that. After this, I'm going to hit validate. And if everything goes green, which it did, there are a few warnings. I can ignore those. I'm going to hit go. So migration of the virtual machine, the 04 one, which we started doing as a bulk migration from on-prem to AVS, has completed. It took about, I guess, 47 minutes to transfer the whole virtual machine and all of its VMDKs. It was a 16 GB VMDK, but the exact amount, because we did a thin provision, would be less than that. In any case, you can see in the migration history, there's a section for events, which is really helpful and quite informative in all the various events which took place during the migration. This is a good one to go through to get a deeper understanding of all the migration stages. We retain the same IP address as we moved, And as you can see, we moved from on-prem VLAN segment to a layer 2 extension segment. I'll do a quick check on the on-prem side. You'll see my O4 has disappeared. And though we do see a copy of it in here, when the migration finished, the local VM is shut down and renamed with a random number suffix. So if need be, we can always move it back to the original name and power it on. Okay, so this is retained. The user can, or administrator can go in later on once they're comfortable with the VM running in AVS. They can come back to on-prem and delete these. Okay. Now let's check our vCenter in AVS. This is my AVS vCenter, and this is the folder where we had moved the virtual machine. O4 was the one where we put our machine. I'm going to log in. Just want to make sure machine is up and happy. And to log in here. IP address is 204. We retained it as we expected. I'm gonna ping the gateway. As you'll see, the gateway now is at 60 millisecond plus, which is an indicator that it's going over a wide area network from Azure region to on-prem, from Santa Clara to Chicago. And if it was local, it would be in sub-millisecond range. Okay, so the ping is going across the network. I do want to switch to this slide. Want to show you a few things here. Let's go back in here. So we did the layer 2 extension. We migrated the virtual machine. We kept the default gateway to be on-prem. And this is the IP address of the VM sitting inside AVS. We do have another VM, this 10.5 on a different subnet. But as you would notice, our extended network, the orange network, is not connected to local T1. So for VM4 to ping VM2, it basically will go over the layer 2 tunnel back to on-prem and then come back over the express route connection to get to the VM2. So when we do a ping from say 204 to 193, we saw ping return time about 60 millisecond. And in this case, since it's going down, going back up, and the response is going to take the reverse path, we should expect the ping return time to be about 120 milliseconds. So we're going to go test it out. Okay, so remember this 10.5. Okay, so let me switch back to my lab, and I'm going to ping 10.129.10.5. So as expected, the round trip from AVS sitting in Azure region to on-prem and then back to AVS to reach the destination IP, and then response taking the reverse path. So as expected, it's taking 120 millisecond plus. And even though the VM is sitting in the same region, one is on layer 2 extension, and this other destination 10.5 is on a layer 3 segment, by default, since the gateway is on-prem, it's going to go around the world. Okay, so if there is a requirement that a VM which is on a layer 2 extension need to talk to the local VMs inside of the same AVS locally and not go over the tunnel, then we need to enable mobility optimized network. And that's something we'll tackle in the next session. Just looking at the AVS NSX, the layer 2 extension segment, as you'll notice now, it has two ports. One is the network extension appliance, and other is our O4 VM, which we moved over. Okay, so NSX, vCenter, HCX, all of them are in sync, and the gateway connectivity here is off. So it's consistent with what we expected in this bulk migration with default gateway in on-prem location. Okay, so I'm gonna stop this session, and then we'll regroup in the next one.